How's it going, guys? It's Paul Myers, licensed professional counselor, owner, and lead therapist of Intentional Counseling. Today I'm going to cover one of the imprints from one of my favorite marriage books I've read, How We Love. And this imprint is pretty common if you had a really difficult childhood or difficult family of origin. This will be helpful for you as to how your marriage is influenced by your childhood. And so each person's childhood environment does tend to dictate our fundamental view of love. And so this is the victim imprint we're going to cover as the parenting environment of the imprint that creates the imprint, the symptoms of the imprint, how to identify it, and the resolution, how to cure it. So in here I have it broken down. There's the parenting style, or the childhood environment that creates this imprint. For the victim imprint, don't look at the word victim in a traditional sense where I'm playing the victim, like I'm making excuses for me and throwing a pity party for myself. That is not what that means. That's just a negative connotation that people have with that word. So don't get hooked up on the word. Instead, look at the environment and the symptoms. The childhood environment is abusive or neglectful. It has violence or really high conflict, an environment that has frequent high conflict, and there's frequent anger outbursts, or their parents have some form of addiction that's very problematic. Substance abuse, alcohol problems. The environment is characterized as chaotic, unsafe, and unstable. So what happens is children in these environments, they don't feel safe and secure, and they usually can take it one of two ways. The victim is one of those. So symptoms of this imprint is the child takes the environment and really internalizes it. So they really blame themselves, and they take it inside. So it's a low self-worth. Depression is very much guaranteed, and anxiety is almost guaranteed. These go hand in hand with these experiences, very normal human reaction to a negative childhood like that. Victim people they have really poor boundaries, so their boundaries are weak or passive. They don't hold others accountable. They tend to get taken advantage of, and they tend to tolerate it. They tolerate others' negative behavior. The victim imprint, because of the low self-esteem, they tend to date people that they feel that they deserve. So they date and marry people who treat them poorly. Not all the time, but that happens a lot, because that's what they feel like they deserve. And it's comfortable for them. So getting treated poorly, abuse is familiar and comfortable. And so they tolerate and accept that kind of behavior, which is not a good thing, but that's very characteristic of them. They always blame themselves. Very rarely will you find these people, shifting blame or making excuses. They'll usually blame themselves and internalize, and they have less shame. They shut down to survive, and they just kind of, weather the storm and just kind of take it. They have lots of expectations of their spouse being angry in the future, or angry in general, even when it may not be the case. So it's very fear-based, insecure-based, self-worth-based, shame-based, poor boundaries. What happens is they get treated really poorly and they don't hold their spouse accountable, which can be problematic in a one-sided relationship. Resolution. So one of the biggest things is self-esteem, self-worth. You really need to do the work to feel confident in seeing their sense of value. And God says we're all valuable, and the best identity comes from God, and sense of worth and value. And that's a good self-esteem, good identity for somebody to have. It's not really based on what other people think, but more so on what God thinks of you. Boundaries, and able to have a healthy relationship, you have to be honest and authentic and have boundaries with your spouse. Otherwise, they're not going to grow, they're not going to be held accountable, they're not going to learn. And they need to, that's a healthy part of marriage, is the accountability that it brings. But the victim has a hard time holding those accountable out of fear. So boundaries are huge. Treat the depression. Depression's a key aspect of the symptoms of this style. Anxiety also goes hand in hand sometimes with that. And so really get that treated professionally. Definitely get a counselor if you don't have one, or do a 12-step program of some kind, like a Celebrate Recovery or something like that. Very positive for people. Lots of reassurance you're going to seek. The more reassurance you get, it'll kind of help reduce those fears that really get in the way of doing the work that you need to do to undo this style. Lots of anxiety that comes with getting treated. Because there's a lot of shame and embarrassment, they have a hard time asking for help because they don't feel valuable enough to even get help. And so they tend to just stay in that relationship and tolerate it. Identifying toxic behaviors in others. They have a hard time seeing that other people have flaws because they think that they're the problem. The last one, or last two, is to speak up authentically and be vulnerable in a supportive environment. And if you can do those, there's a lot of healing when people respond with positivity and grace and support. And it brings some healing to your past lives. You get to work through some of that and discuss it. So, very healthy, very positive. And that's the victim imprint. So it really is not that they make excuses for themselves and they throw a pity party. It's not that. It's really that they genuinely become victims in their relationships because they always take the blame and tolerate other people's negative behavior, and they kind of doormat themselves, and they get exploited very easily and taken advantage of very easily. And they tend to marry the wrong people that treat them very poorly. And so they actually legitimately become a victim unintentionally. They're not trying to do that, it just kind of happens because it's familiar and comfortable. And so I see that a lot, people get abused growing up, they got abused by their dad or their mom, and then they marry somebody who's abusive because they think that's what love is. And that's very sad. So definitely want to get this. This is one of the most potent styles out there. There's another one we'll cover that's more potent than this one next, but this is pretty particularly destructive because the childhood environment was pretty destructive in a very potent way. So a little bit more work to undo this, but never too late. So you can always get help, no matter what. Don't be embarrassed. Getting help shows courage and strength, and it shows that you value yourself enough to want to be the best version of yourself and the best version for your marriage. Alright guys, if you don't have a counselor, feel free to go to the website. It's intentional-counseling.com. Either myself or a trained therapist would be happy to help you, either in person or virtual. If you have any questions, feel free to ask or leave a comment below. As always, subscribe, that helps us. And until next time, we'll see you then. Take care.